300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. A jam-packed Wednesday in sports from the NBA free agency. Some big news out of Dodgers with the Astros coming into town. Some big news in baseball. The Olympics is tonight, the semifinal matchup between the U.S. and Australia, and the Lakers making big moves in the NBA. And this is where we start our show on a Wednesday morning. The Los Angeles Lakers making a flurry of moves in the NBA free agency, which began at 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday afternoon. And this is what we expected to see. Major overhaul with this roster, major overhaul with this team. And when we look at all the moves, the most notable one yesterday, the Lakers reunite LeBron with his old-time buddy, Carmelo Anthony. Finally, after 19 years, it's taken. After 18 seasons and into his 19th season, Carmelo Anthony is finally a Los Angeles Laker. Dwight Howard was also signed by the Lakers. Trevor Ariza, Kent Bazemore, to name a couple. Malik Monk, they signed yesterday, who I will touch on. Kendrick Nunn as well. They re-signed Talen Horton-Tucker. And the thing that is notable about this is that the Lakers have clearly outlined and laid out what their game plan is. And that's to win now. But there's a difference between a winning now mentality, going all in right now, and actually having a structure in place so that you can replicate winning now. So when we look at what the Lakers have been doing for LeBron, this roster is not a roster built for the long-term future. This is not even a roster that's been constructed for beyond this season. They've got 4 guys. That's it. 4 guys on their entire roster right now that are signed through multiple years. They got LeBron, AD, and Russ, their big 3, and they got Marc Gasol. That's who they had signed for a long-term, a quote-unquote long-term deal prior to yesterday. And now you add in Talen Horton-Tucker, who signed a 3-year, $32 million deal. So that's only 5. 5 of the 12 guys. The remaining roster is comprised of guys all on 1-year deals. And so what you're seeing is that the Lakers and Rob Pelinka saying, listen, we got LeBron age 36. We are trying to milk as much of this Anthony Davis-LeBron James duo as we possibly can. We are trying to milk this duo into as many titles as we possibly can. We need to extract the most out of their talent on a year-by-year basis. This isn't a roster that is going to be the same thing next year. And this isn't to suggest that the Lakers can't win the title this year, can't win the title the year after that, or 3 or 4 years down the line. But what they're setting themselves up for right now is consistent turnover, being able to surround these guys year in and year out with guys on 1-year deals, because this is a 1 year at a time mentality, literally a 1 year at a time mentality. And so, yes, this is an old team, but that's why this works on a 1 year basis. As I mentioned, they're not structuring this team to be able to sustain multiple years and have a legitimate core for 5-6 years down the line. They've got 8 players that are over the age of 30. They've got 5 players, which is an NBA record for guys that are over the age of 35, who they signed in the same offseason. So you got Carmelo Anthony, 37, LeBron James, 36, Trevor Ariza, 36, Dwight Howard, 35, Marc Gasol is 35, Kent Bazemore is 32, Westbrook is 32, Wayne Ellington is 33. And under any other circumstance, I would acknowledge, well, this really isn't sustainable or a pragmatic approach to long-term success. But that's the thing about this roster and why I love all of these moves is because they're not thinking down the line. And the value that one championship can bring, and what we saw, the value that one championship already brought, is enough of an impetus to say, let's surround our 2 stars with guys that can continue to keep us in contention year in and year out. And again, that's why Rob Pelinka, I think, has done a masterful job building out this roster, because now let's look at the personnel standpoint. It absolutely fits now. At first, there was only one piece to the puzzle. Russell Westbrook, how is he going to fit in with LeBron and AD? But now we're starting to see, okay, we're starting to fill out the rest of the roster. We got Wayne Ellington, who can shoot the 3 ball extremely well. And that's what they found is, okay, we needed shooting. How did we address shooting? Well, we bring in Wayne Ellington, who shoots above 40% from 3. Carmelo Anthony coming off a season in which he shot a career-high 41% from the three-point line. Kent Bazemore shot 41% from the three-point line last year. Malik Monk shot 40% from the three-point line last year. So we've got guys who can shoot the 3 ball. We just added Kendrick Nunn as well, the guard from the Miami Heat, who took significantly less money to sign with the Lakers. He shot 38% last year. And so, yes, the defense will take a little bit of a hit. But again, the fact that you have veterans coming to the squad, I actually think can potentially enhance their defense in moments, because I think that they're going to buy into Frank Vogel's defensive scheme. And yes, more of the onus will fall on Anthony Davis, who they still have, Talen Horton-Tucker, Malik Monk, Trevor Ariza, and Russell Westbrook. Those are probably going to be the guys that are asked to exert more energy on the defensive side of the ball. With LeBron at 36, yes, he can still play defense at a high level, but he has to pick and choose his spots. And then we look at, okay, so they've established some shooting. Sure, their defense might take a hit, but now let's look at the depth of this team. Why did the Phoenix Suns go so far last year? It's because they had a guy in Cameron Payne who could back up Chris Paul. They had a deep team that didn't just rely on Devin Booker. The Clippers had depth on their team. Kawhi Leonard goes down. They got Terrence Mann dropping in a career-high 39 points to clinch the series against the Utah Jazz. So now the Lakers, they've got energy. They've got juice. They've got instant offense coming off the bench. If you want to say the first guy off the bench is Carmelo Anthony, fine. You've got a guy in Carmelo who's not only an ISO scorer, he can shoot the three-point shot. You can give it to him when the offense breaks down. He averaged 14 points a game last year. Kendrick Nunn is instant offense off the bench. He averaged 14.5 points per game last year for the Miami Heat. He's a guy that can provide shooting and depth to back up whoever the point guard is. You've got Malik Monk, who can shoot the 3 ball. He averaged a career-high 11 points per game, 41% shooting from the three-point line. That was a career high for him. So then perhaps Talen Horton-Tucker, we saw his playmaking abilities like Monk. The two of them can create, they can distribute, they're athletic, they can get up and down the floor. Those are the 2 young guns on the team. And so I like that. And then you have Dwight Howard again, the guy in the middle. I should have grouped him together with the defensive guys to keep an eye on. And the one piece that people aren't talking about is the fact that Dennis Schroeder is still technically on the team. And the reason why that's significant is because now the Lakers can use Dennis Schroeder in a sign and trade situation where they can try and recoup a defensive player, a defensive stalwart, in exchange for Dennis Schroeder. So when I look at what the Lakers have done, sure, is it the absolute ideal fit? No, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is a complete group of misfits. These are veteran, seasoned, experienced players, which is LeBron's preference, that will come in, understand their roles, and buy in to that system. Understanding, hey, we've got an opportunity to compete for a championship. And this is why you have teams like the Lakers and the Nets that are able to draw in a lot of these veterans, is because, hey, we see an opportunity to chase a ring. We see an opportunity to win a title, but also have clearly defined roles on the team. And that's what's impressive about the Lakers is you've got not only just random veterans that are joining the team, but guys that will be able to plug in and fill specific holes. Trevor Ariza, former Laker coming back. Wayne Ellington, a former Laker coming back. Kent Bazemore, a former Laker coming back. Dwight Howard, a former Laker coming back. They understand what this franchise is about, and it's not going to be a shock to them, all the media coverage and everything else. Now, I will say that letting go of Alex Caruso was a tough pill to stomach. I absolutely adored Alex Caruso. He's a fan favorite in Los Angeles. And I understand why the Lakers had to let him go, because the reality is the choice was simple. They had a mid-level exception and around the amount of money you could spend on a mid-level player. And the two players they were deciding between were Alex Caruso and Talen Horton-Tucker. It's as simple as that. They had about $9 to $11 million per year to give to one of those two guys, and they opted to go with Talen Horton-Tucker. And to be honest, I understand that move, and I'd probably do the same thing. And I'm thrilled for Alex Caruso that he got his money, that Chicago paid him a huge contract, 4 years, $37 million. He deserves every penny of it. I absolutely adore Alex Caruso, and he will be revered in Los Angeles for the number of years. The journey that he's had to overcome, starting in the G League, working his way to a two-way contract, finally making the Lakers roster permanently, being a major contributor to an NBA championship team with the Lakers 2 years ago. He deserves every penny that he's getting, but the reality is there is an inherent ceiling with him as opposed to Talen Horton-Tucker. We've seen likely the peak Alex Caruso, which is great, and I absolutely love him. Talen Horton-Tucker's got so much upside. I understand why the Lakers signed him 3 years, $32 million. They need to keep him around. And again, this is what happens when you play alongside superstars, is you get other veterans to flock to your team, to take discounts, to be a part of special groups, to be a part of groups that have a chance to compete and to contend. And again, going back to Carmelo Anthony, just so happy to see him be reunited with LeBron James. He's going to be extremely motivated. Not only will he buy into his role, but I think he'll play inspired basketball on both sides of the floor. Again, it's just a one-year contract. He understands his role. He's accepted his role. And being in Portland did wonders, just totally revitalized and resuscitated his career. And now he's a legitimate contributor. And again, I understand this is a veteran and an older laden group. This is an older group, but this team isn't built for the future. It's built for 1 year at a time. And with that model in mind, I think that this will work wonders, and I've really, really liked the moves that they've made so far this offseason. Speaking of moves this offseason, the Golden State Warriors signed Steph Curry to a super max contract extension, a 4-year, $215 million extension that is tacked on to the final year of his current contract, which pays him a salary of about $46 million. So if you look at the next 5 years, Over the next 5 years, he's guaranteed $261 million over the next 5 years. This is the second $200+ million contract he signed. That's the first time ever in NBA history that a guy has signed two $200 million contracts. And it's absolutely sensational to see a basketball player be able to demand that type of salary. And so it naturally poses the question, because this is going to retain Steph Curry and keep him with the Golden State Warriors throughout the duration of his prime. And so naturally the question is, well, can the Warriors still manage to win another NBA title with Steph Curry in the Steph Curry era? And so, first of all, he deserves every single penny of it. What he's meant to this organization cannot be understated and cannot be denied. Not only has he elevated himself to the greatest Golden State Warrior ever, but he's revolutionized the game along the way. His style of play, along with Klay Thompson, they're the greatest shooting backcourt in the history of the NBA. But you've got a guy in Steph Curry who's one of the top 4 most influential basketball players in NBA history. In NBA history. That's how much he's transcended the game with the three-point shot. His ability to not only shoot it off the dribble, but to have the combination and the combined skill set of being able to hit the open three, running off screens, moving without the basketball, shooting the three on the dribble. The floor spacing that he and now Klay Thompson, the two of them, create, they change the way that teams have to approach constructing a team, because now you need guys who can hit the long ball to match their star power, and you need guys that can defend the three-point shot, that can stretch out to defend those guys. And then the other thing is, he was part of a Golden State Warriors team. He was part of a team that revolutionized basketball. Because now playing small ball, what was truly kind of established, and it really kind of blossomed and took off because of what the Warriors did, playing 5 out with a center who's a little bit undersized in Draymond Green, who's versatile and well-equipped to defend 1 through 5 and also shoot the three ball and be a playmaker. This team, this core group of Steph, Klay, and Draymond totally revolutionized the game, which is why, to me, they absolutely can win another title in the Steph Curry era. Because if you look at this iteration of the Golden State Warriors team, it's amazing to me the narratives that have surrounded this team that have shifted over time, because they've been one of the most fascinating teams. Their rapid rise to the top of the NBA standings and reaching the apex and the upper tier of the NBA, and then their sudden and precipitous fall to the depths of the NBA, being one of the worst teams in a matter of seconds. Because it all started with Steph, Klay, and Draymond in 2013 when they reached the second round. They beat the Nuggets in the first round, lost to the Spurs in the second round. 2014, they lost to the Clippers in 7 games in that first round series. And then from there, they went on to win the NBA Finals and advanced to the NBA Finals 5 consecutive seasons. And it was in this moment, again, where they win the title in 2015. They lose to LeBron and the Cavs in 2016. Back-to-back titles with KD, 2017, 2018. The only reason why they lost the finals to the Raptors in 2019 was injuries. KD and Klay went down. And then, obviously, Steph broke his hand the following year. Was a futile year. Klay Thompson ruptures his Achilles, and they have to start all over. But they've always maintained the talent to be an elite team. And that's why, again, they absolutely can still win an NBA title in the Steph Curry era, is because, let's be honest, the one thing that we've seen that can prolong careers the most in the NBA is shooting. The guys that can shoot the ball can not only remain relevant in the NBA, you can stay productive and you can be one of the integral pieces to a championship team. And that's what the Warriors have. You've got the greatest shooting backcourt ever to be able to keep your team relevant, to spread the floor, to draw in players. They're so unselfish with the basketball. They move without the basketball so well. It makes them a popular destination. And again, whether or not Bob Myers makes any changes this offseason and makes some big splash, successfully is able to execute a massive trade, which I think that he should do, but whether or not he can, if you just look at the roster that they have, I think that this Golden State Warriors team with Steph, with a healthy Klay Thompson, or even an 80 to 85% Klay Thompson, I think they're a top 3 team in the Western Conference right now. The only team that is head and shoulders above everyone else is the Lakers. But I think you've got the Warriors kind of grouped together with the Phoenix Suns, with the Denver Nuggets, with the Utah Jazz. The Clippers obviously are without Kawhi Leonard, so I've relegated them to more of a mediocre team. But again, that's really outside of the Lakers, it's pretty open. The Western Conference is pretty open. Again, you have a guy in Steph Curry that even at age 33 just won the scoring title, averaging 32 points per game. On 13 three-point shot attempts per game, he hit 42% of them. And that was when he was the focal point, when they didn't have anyone else to be able to divide and be able to split up some of the defenders. He was having to deal with double teams and triple teams every single time he stepped a foot over the midcourt line. So I think that personally, again, he just made his first team All-NBA for the 4th time. The marksmen that they have, I think that they are in a prime position to continue to win because teams and players, or more so players, will flock to Golden State. Their championship might not be this year. But if you're asking me in the entire Golden State Warriors era, whether they can win, I totally think that they can. And let's see, another comment by Look At Me. Magic. Mo Wagner agreed to a 2-year deal. I like that. That would be something special. Listen, there's no reason to group Mo Wagner in this category, by the way. Look At Me. Appreciate you watching Morning Joe. Because listen, Mo Wagner, he did his job. He was a great cheerleader off the bench, kind of one of these Robert Sacre types that will go down in Laker lore as one of the all-time NBA cheerleaders for Lakers. I liked Mo Wagner. Happy that his brother got drafted. No need to group him as part of that. Okay. By the way, very quickly, there have been some notable free agent signings this offseason that I did want to touch on because there are 4 teams that I want to highlight right now that, again, made a lot of really significant moves. They probably won't get as much attention as some of these other teams. Some of them might. But there are 4 teams that I really want to highlight that I think have had really productive offseasons so far, that I really think have done a marvelous job of surrounding their teams with more talent, really going out and improving their teams. So, first team is the Miami Heat. You sign Kyle Lowry and you sign PJ Tucker. They re-signed Duncan Robinson, obviously extended Jimmy Butler. But what I like about this is twofold. First of all, you've got 2 dogs, and obviously we know from PJ Tucker that he thought that the Milwaukee Bucks already had dogs and that they just needed someone to tell them that they're dogs. And that's what PJ Tucker did. But you kind of weaken the Milwaukee Bucks by being able to pry him away from them. You bring him to Miami. You sign Kyle Lowry, who obviously will demand a lot of respect, and he'll earn the respect of Jimmy Butler and that entire team. Eric Spoelstra, he's a perfect fit with the Miami Heat. You've got a potential starting 5 of Bam Adebayo, PJ Tucker, Duncan Robinson, who can shoot the lights out, Jimmy Butler, and Kyle Lowry. That's a pretty solid starting 5. Then you got Tyler Hero coming off the bench. And Precious Ochoa, I still like. I think he's got some potential. The second-year player from Nigeria who was playing for the Nigerian national team. But the thing is with the Miami Heat, to me, it all comes down to Tyler Hero off the bench. Because if he plays like he did his rookie year, and again, I don't want to go as far as to say he had a sophomore slump, because he still averaged 15 points per game in the regular season. In the playoffs, those numbers dipped to 9 points per game this year as opposed to 16 points per game last year. But if he can kind of bounce back and find his rookie year form, well, then the Miami Heat, they are legitimate challengers, not to maybe win the entire NBA championship, but to challenge some of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Not to mention, they still have Victor Oladipo, who obviously ruptured his quad last year, but he's expected to make a full recovery, be back by November. So again, another interesting asset that maybe they can either keep or convert into someone else. So I think that with these moves, they've elevated themselves to a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. I still would have them behind the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks, but I think that what we saw from the Philadelphia 76ers last year, with the liability that can sometimes be Ben Simmons, that can be a huge inhibitor to their potential and impediment to their success, I think the Miami Heat could be right there at number 3, maybe tied with the 76ers, but I think that they're kind of level right now. So that's first team. Second team, the Brooklyn Nets, no one's going to talk about them because they already had such a great compilation of talent and players, but I think that not only did they sign Blake Griffin, they re-signed Blake Griffin, who preserves some size for them, because they obviously lost Jeff Green, who, it's amazing to me that he's listed as a forward/center. Jeff Green, who's like 6'8", based on the role that he played with the Brooklyn Nets last year. So I think that it was smart to retain Blake Griffin. I love the signing of Patty Mills. The fact that you got him on the cheap, 2 years, $12 million. He's a floor spacer. He's a leader. He's unselfish. He shot the ball 37.5% from the three-point line over the course of 12 seasons in the NBA. He's a career 39% three-point shooter, averaged 11 points per game last year under Greg Popovich. So he's a disciplined player. He's an unselfish player. He spaces the floor. He can be that sixth man and instant offense to back up Kyrie Irving off the bench. I really liked him. And again, I do think the one player that they need to look at moving, or at least try and find an upgrade, is at the center position with DeAndre Jordan. He was really inconsequential last year. Really didn't play much. They need one big. They need some type of big. They really don't have anyone. In addition to that, the Chicago Bulls. Listen, I'm not saying that this is going to be a team that will win an NBA title, but if you look at their activity and the offseason moves that they've made, they've been the most active team this offseason outside of the Lakers. Again, this is a team that finished 31-41 last year, 11th in the Eastern Conference. They just missed the play-in tournament. You sign Lonzo Ball, who's one of my favorite players. I absolutely love Lonzo Ball. I think he'll flourish. He's really started to come into his own now. You sign Alex Caruso, who's instant energy, great defender, a 40% three-point shooter, and he's going to give you his effort every single night. Every single night, he will give you everything he has. Chicago is going to absolutely embrace him. And then listen, you still sign for DeMar DeRozan, which is an upgrade, because now you pair all 3 of those guys with Zach LaVine, with Nikola Vucevic, who you traded for at the end of last year, that actually made a big difference for the Chicago Bulls. The reason why the Bulls, I think, missed the play-in tournament is because Zach LaVine, due to COVID health and safety protocols, had to miss about 2 weeks during a critical stretch of their season towards the end of the year. So you still have Zach LaVine, as I mentioned, Nikola Vucevic, Lauri Markkanen, who I still like, still very productive, Kobe White. So they've got some guys, and again, all they needed was some seasoned, proven players that can help elevate them, that can help them ascend. And so I think that this upcoming year, this is a playoff team. At the very least, a team that's going to make the play-in tournament. I like what they've done. And I like some of the pieces that they've added. Again, they just needed more talent to legitimize their operations there. So that's at number 3. And finally, the fourth team that made some headlines predominantly because of this morning was the New York Knicks. It was just announced this morning that Kemba Walker signed with them. And under any other circumstance, he obviously agreed to a buyout with OKC. Under any other circumstance, I would say that at this point in Kemba Walker's career, there's no point in trading away all these assets to bring him in. But the reality is the Knicks didn't have to give up anything to acquire Kemba Walker. They still get to retain RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Julius Randle. They re-signed Derrick Rose. And this is a harmonious match because Madison Square Garden is the venue that made Kemba Walker. We remember Kemba Walker because of that moment in the Big East tournament in 2011 when he upset Pittsburgh. It was the cardiac Kemba moment, and that propelled UConn to winning the NCAA championship in 2011. His biggest moment of perhaps his basketball career transpired at Madison Square Garden. And so I think he'll feel comfortable. He'll feel at home playing in the Garden. And again, you didn't have to give up anything to acquire him. You re-signed Derrick Rose. And listen, you can argue whether or not you overpaid for Evan Fournier, but the bottom line is this. If this Evan Fournier that we're seeing in the Olympics is what the Knicks are going to get, again, is it going to elevate them to a championship? No, but it might further legitimize their standing as an NBA playoff team. And again, it doesn't compromise anything you're doing long-term for future players, future stars. You bring in Kemba. You don't have to trade away any assets. To me, I think it's a nice move. Personally, I think personally it's a nice move. This is a topic that I was excited about. I have to get rid of that. So the Houston Astros visited the Dodgers last night for the first time since their scandalous World Series title in 2017. Max Scherzer is making his Dodger debut tonight. He starts for the Dodgers tonight. Obviously, the Astros beat the Dodgers last night 3-0, but the scene was fantastic. You had inflatable trash cans that were being hit all over the stands at Dodger Stadium. They were booing vociferously. It was beautiful to see because that's what was deserved. And you had all this pent up energy and anger and frustration that hadn't had an outlet in over a year and a half. This was the first time that the Astros had visited Dodger Stadium since that scandal and since they pilfered a title away from the Dodgers in 2017. So I've uttered and reinforced this sentiment before, and that is that universally what we're seeing across sports, across the sports landscape, is that the bold teams, the courageous, the audacious sports franchises that are willing to make bold moves are typically the teams that experience the most success and flourish the most and thrive the most. That's what we're seeing. Because we're seeing a flurry of moves during this MLB free agency, or not free agency, but during the trade deadline that I didn't really touch on. You obviously had the Giants stockpiling with Chris Bryant, the Mets signing Javier Baez, the Yankees signing Anthony Rizzo, ironically all from the Chicago Cubs. But the Dodgers are one of the few teams that are consistently and have been consistently in the mix for big names, but they only take calculated risks. They don't just sign the flashiest players. They don't just sign big-time names to make a splash. They had an opportunity to sign Bryce Harper. They didn't. They opted for a guy in Mookie Betts who's got a more reserved temperament, a little bit more soft-spoken, a little bit less of a persona. Tremendous talent, but they signed, who else did they sign? Jace Utley, David Freese, Chris Taylor. Really talented guys, but aren't going to be necessarily household names, or if they are, there isn't the unnecessary burden of, well, will they be a distraction to the team? Trevor Bauer, who I'll address in a moment, the reality is this was a Dodgers team that was coming off a World Series title. They felt like they needed to address starting pitching. And they signed an all-star in Trevor Bauer. So that's who they added at the time to their Dodgers squad. But the main reason why the Dodgers for so many years, especially recently since 2013, and it's really blossomed since 2016, have been such a powerhouse in baseball is because they haven't rested on their laurels or the talent that they've had in the past. They've never been complacent. They've continued to try and restock and retool and revamp and elevate and improve their roster even after titles. Again, they knocked on the door 2016, reached the NLCS, lost to the Cubs. 2017, as I mentioned, they reached the World Series. They should have beaten the Astros, had that one stolen away from them. 2018, they lost to the Red Sox in the World Series. And then last year, they finally broke through. And so now they go and trade for Max Scherzer, an all-star ace, one of the greatest pitchers in MLB history. And they also get to sweeten the deal by trading for an all-star shortstop in Trey Turner, who's arguably the fastest player in MLB as well. But the reason why this was such a significant move is threefold. One, as I mentioned, Max Scherzer is one of the best pitchers, not only this year, having a 2.76 ERA, opposing batting average of 1.82, one of the best in the MLB. So he's having one of the best seasons. This is a 7-time All-Star, a 3-time Cy Young winner, 4-time league winner, league wins leader, and a World Series champion. That's number one. Number two is, well, you've addressed the need to fill in the void that will inevitably be left by Trevor Bauer when they likely either cut him or move off of him amid the sexual assault allegations. So you fill that void of having another starting pitcher. And not only do you have a starting pitcher, you have a starting pitcher who's an absolute ace in Max Scherzer. And number three is some of the rivals for the Dodgers and the other elite teams in the MLB were also pursuing and targeting Scherzer. The Padres appeared close to signing Max Scherzer, and the Dodgers were able to not only prevent the Padres from signing him, but they also buffered their own starting pitching. So they improved their team and their starting pitching, and they also prevented him from going to their rival within their own division, within their own same division. And this is a Dodgers team, mind you, that already had the best ERA in baseball. They had the best bullpen and pitching staff in baseball. And now you go out and trade for this guy. And it just harkens back to the point that I was making earlier about how these teams, and especially the Dodgers, and the job that Andrew Friedman has done, being bold, taking calculated risks, and it's paid off. Think about this. The combination of Clayton Kershaw, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, David Price, Albert Pujols, and Max Scherzer, those guys have a combined 6 MVPs, 7 Cy Young awards. The Dodgers feature a starting lineup in whatever order you see fit of Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Julio Urias, David Price, and then Tony Gonsolin. It is going to be absolutely a treacherous path to go through for opposing players come postseason. It is just unbelievable that they were able to land all these guys. I'm selfishly thrilled about it as a Dodgers fan. But again, it's not just the fact that they signed a big name. They signed big names that legitimately fill voids that they have. They're smart, calculated moves, and just wizardry by Andrew Friedman to pull this off. I cannot wait to see him start tonight for the Dodgers, especially against the Astros, a team that we vehemently hate. And it would have been such a more satisfying moment had the Dodgers won last night, but whatever, they didn't. They'll do it tonight instead. Okay, Final topic, and then my Malkin's moments. A number of historic Malkin's moments coming up just around the corner. But the U.S. men's national team in basketball, they're facing off against Australia tonight. They're coming off a win over Spain, 95-81. They managed to overcome. Ricky Rubio dropped 38 points in that game, looking like an all-star. So they're facing Australia tonight in the semifinals. This is an Australian team, by the way, that they played in the exhibition, in an exhibition game in the lead up to Tokyo earlier. They lost 91-83. They feature Patty Mills, Joe Ingles, names that you're familiar with, Matisse Thybulle, Aaron Baines, Dante Exum, and Matthew Dellavedova. And after dropping their first game to France, the U.S. team has won 3 straight games. And now they obviously get an opportunity to avenge that loss, to exact some revenge in the semifinal matchup. Now, much to contrary belief, the U.S. men's basketball team is actually not that far different from an NBA basketball team. And the game against Spain proved that to be the case. What do we know about the NBA? In the NBA, superstars win titles. The lone exception, the one outlier and anomaly, is 2004 with the Pistons, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, the Wallace brothers, Tayshaun Prince. That's the lone exception in NBA history. The formula, what organizations have discovered, is that as great as a collective group can be, you're not winning an NBA title without a superstar. That's just not the case. We look at the NBA championship just from last year with the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks, who won the NBA title, did not win the NBA title because they necessarily had the best group of guys, that they had the best team. They won the title because their best player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, is a freak and dropped 50 points in a title-clinching Game 6. He's a superstar. The Lakers won all these titles with Magic, Kareem, Kobe, LeBron, because they have superstars. Shaquille O'Neal, because they have superstars. The Bulls didn't win just because of Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and Tony Kukoc and Steve Kerr and John Paxson. They won because they had Michael Jordan. Raptors won a title with Kawhi Leonard. That's why they won the title. Organizations realized and discovered that the strategy, the formula, the model that we must follow to have success in the NBA, to give ourselves a chance to win a title, is by some measure, by some way, we need to acquire a superstar, whether it's through the draft, through trades, or through free agency. That is what's required. Because when you have a superstar, everything else seems to fittingly fall in place. Orders established, players kind of relinquish some of their personal pride. They recognize who the leader is, and they allow the leader and the superstar to be a superstar and to take over games. Because they understand where they stand on the totem pole. They understand who the top guy is. It's the teams without a superstar that plateau. It's the teams without a superstar that have an inherent ceiling that is considerably lower than that of a team with a superstar. And when we look at the Olympics, and the reason why this connects so beautifully to this Olympic team right now is because for the first time throughout these entire Olympics, the U.S. team finally said and acknowledged we've got a superstar in Kevin Durant. Prior to this game, they were playing like everyone should be eating equally. This is an egalitarian basketball team. Let's spread the shots. Let's move the basketball. Everyone gets involved. But if you look at the Olympics and the last 3 gold medals that the U.S. team has won, they haven't just won because they've had an overwhelming amount of talent juxtapose their opponents. They won because, yes, they had talent, but they turned to their superstars and their leaders to get the job done, to lead them, to close them down the stretch. 2008, the Redeem Team with Kobe, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Chris Paul, Jason Kidd. They won because Kobe took over in the fourth quarter. They beat Spain because he drops 13 points in the fourth quarter to close the game. 2012, they won against Spain again to win gold because the combination of KD and LeBron, the two superstars, closed the deal. KD dropped 30 points. LeBron had a flurry of 5 points under the final 2 minutes of the game to win the gold medal. They turned their superstars. 2016, yes, it was a blowout. The game wasn't close, but why was the game not close? Because Kevin Durant drops 30 points, drops 18 points in the second quarter. They turned to a superstar instead. Take us there. And in the game against Spain, it was the first time all Olympics that Greg Popovich, the players, the entire team understood this is Kevin Durant's team. Yes, Damian Lillard is a superstar. I absolutely love Damian Lillard. He's a top 10 player in the NBA. He is a superstar, but Kevin Durant is the superstar. Durant drops 29 points to lead and pace the team. Yes, it was nice. Lillard dropped in 11. Tatum dropped in 13. Drew Holiday with 12. That's all nice. But the reason why they won this game and finally looked like the team that we have come to know and love is because of Kevin Durant. And again, sure, this isn't their absolute A-list team. They do have two superstars, but it's filled out with a bunch of all-stars, which is still good enough to win the Olympics. But the reason why they won is because they said, let our superstar be a superstar and take over the game. In the exhibition loss to Australia, the reason they lost that game is because the superstar was Patty Mills. Patty Mills was the best player on the floor in that loss. The U.S. was sharing the basketball, making the extra pass. Everyone's eating the same. And with Australia, sure, Joe Ingles chipped in 17 points, Matisse Thybulle with 12, but it was Patty Mills scoring 22 points, taking over in the fourth quarter, hitting big shots. He was their go-to guy. He established himself as the superstar, the quasi-superstar in that game. And so, again, for the first time these Olympics, the U.S. men's basketball team finally recognized, let Durant take over. Let's not play this Olympic game like everyone's the same. Everyone should get the same number of shots. No, treat the Olympic game like it's an NBA game. And in an NBA game, you let the bulk of the cast of characters help guide you for most of the game and down the stretch, and in different big spurts and moments in the game, you let your best player close. You let your best player take over the game and lead you to wins. And that's why they're going to win this game against Australia, because they're not going to make that same mistake. They're not going to play with this approach of let's have Drew Holiday and Devin Booker and Chris Middleton and Jason Tatum and Bam Adebayo and Dame Lillard have the same number of shots as Kevin Durant. No, let Durant take over the game and everyone else find your role, fill your spot, and fill your role like you would in an NBA game. And that's really what it comes down to, and that's what they should be doing and the strategy they should be deploying. And that's the strategy I expect that they will enact and deploy tonight. Finally, my Malkin's moments. I'll probably end a couple minutes earlier today. I have a couple of great Malkin's moments. First, the American Sydney McLaughlin. She won the gold medal for the 400-meter hurdles a couple of days ago in the women's track and field events. Such a special moment because not only was this her first gold medal, but she was competing against her own teammate in Delilah Muhammad. The two of them in all the meets and the preliminary races and the qualifying races leading up and all the heats leading up to this final were trading world records, and McLaughlin set a new world record that she had set earlier in the Olympic trials to win the gold medal. She ran the 400-meter hurdles in 51.46 seconds, which broke her own world record. Again, to win her first gold medal. That's one of the reasons why the track and field events are so special, so fun to watch. So big shout out to her. Sticking with the track and field, listen, Norway's Karsten Wollholm, that was he won the 400-meter hurdles for the men. That was one of the most unbelievably exciting and thrilling races I've ever seen. For an entire minute, I was absolutely transfixed on the television. I was glued to the television. And what he accomplished to run the 400-meter hurdles in, they said, 45.94 seconds, which is the world record. And the fact that he held off the American Rai Benjamin, the two of them were lock and step throughout the entire way. And it was so exhilarating, entertaining, and blazing speed. The fact that, again, it's not just one race around the track. You factor in the hurdles, just makes it that much more challenging. So much fun to watch. Big shout out to him. That was one of the most incredible races that I've ever seen. And to set a new world record like that, unbelievable. Those last 60 yards with the final two hurdles between the two of them going neck and neck was something special to behold. Big shout out to Simone Biles for mustering up the courage and the bravery to persevere and make a triumphant return to win bronze on the balancing beam event. In fact, the fact that she won bronze is an incredibly heartwarming story, again, of triumph and perseverance. But the amazing thing about her, and this is why she's the GOAT, is that she said that this was a routine that she mastered at the age of 12. In fact, she was so good at this routine at the age of 12, she had to move on and start learning and executing more advanced routines. This was her 12-year-old routine that she executed at the Olympic Games. At the Olympic Games, it's unbelievable. I believe it's her 6th medal that she's won at the Olympics. And again, she's just 24. Just unbelievable. Incredibly proud of her that she found the strength and she was able to set aside some of these demons going on internally. Just incredible amount of courage and bravery to come out there and execute flawlessly. Her dismount was a double backflip. That was the dismount. I don't even know how to do one, let alone executing that on twice or on a beam. It's amazing. And then finally, Steph Curry, as I mentioned, signed a 4-year, $215 million contract extension with the Warriors. This makes him the first player ever in NBA history to sign multiple $200 million contracts. Again, he's been an absolute linchpin to this organization, the greatest Golden State Warrior ever of all time. He was deserving of all this money, and he is not only the face of the franchise, but one of the few players that has a great appreciation for staying true to themselves, remaining with one team. Kobe did it. Tim Duncan did it. Dirk Nowitzki did it. And now Steph Curry's doing it. And it's unbelievable to see. He deserves all the money that he is getting. So that's about all the time that I got for today. Thank you so much for joining me right here on Morning Joe on Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to like, review, comment, subscribe to my YouTube page, Morning Joe with Jonah Malkin. Follow me on Twitter at Morning Joe or at Jonah Malkin or JMalk97 on Instagram, all that jazz. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.